Welcome back to the Weekend Warrior Show. In case you haven't noticed or didn't realize it, those posters in the new intro are from my favorite movies of 2026 so far. So if you haven't been paying attention to my reviews, you can go back, look at those posters, and get a pretty good idea of what I've liked this year so far. I'm doing things a little different this week, mainly due to the ongoing Tribeca Film Festival. I hope to have some reviews from movies I've seen soon. If you haven't been keeping track on my Letterboxd or Twitter accounts, but because of that, I won't be doing a box office recap this week. We'll be talking about how Scary Movie or Master of the Universe did at the box office. One did better than the other. I know you can just go to the numbers.com, which is the-numbers.com. You can see that info. I don't need to parse it out for you. I mean, Master of the Universe came about where I thought it was. Scary Movie did much better. That's about it. I'm recording this week's episode on Sunday since that's when I have time. Not only that, but I'll also be including two video reviews, one for RuPaul's Stop That Train, and the other one for the Asian action thriller The Furious. Hopefully, I'll have a separate video review of Steven Spielberg's Disclosure Day sometime on Tuesday. But due to Tribeca and all the balls I have in the air right now, I'm not 100% sure I can get to it. I'm seeing Disclosure Day late on Monday night, and we'll see if I can turn around on time. As expected, the big movie this week is going to be the return of Steven Spielberg to science fiction with Disclosure Day, featuring one Oscar winner and a bunch of Oscar-nominated actors. So here's the trailer for that. I've seen this trailer about a dozen times or more over the last couple months, but at least has my pal Olive looking at a phone in the subway. So check out that trailer.
What did you steal?
Secrets. The data they paid me to protect.
Are they people?
No.
Good morning, Kansas City. Let's take a look at today. Today is today's.
Do you understand what she's saying?
I hear it's gibberish. I can't understand it.
And I can.
Steven Spielberg has regularly returned to science fiction ever since his earlier breakout film Close Encounters of a Third Kind, way back in 1977. Disclosure Day is another movie about the world learning that there are aliens living on Earth. At least I think that's what it's about, because Universal refused to show me the movie before Monday night, which is after I'm recording this. So I'm just guessing based on that trailer. Written by David Koepp, who has been having quite a renaissance in recent years with last year's Presence and Black Bag for Steven Soderbergh, and writing Jurassic World Rebirth. I won't even mention Cold Storage, which was one of Koepp's rare misses last year. The latest Jurassic World may have started Koepp's most recent collab with Steven Spielberg, having written Jurassic Park over 30 years ago. This one has a great cast, including Emily Blunt, Josh O'Connor, and Coleman Domingo, as well as others, which I'll talk about in a bit. Surprisingly, there's actually box office data for Close Encounters online, and it was a huge hit for its times, making 169 million domestic, more than that overseas, based on a 20 million budget. Spielberg had already made waves in Hollywood with the box office success of Jaws a few years earlier, but Close Encounters clinched it with a movie that only opened with 5.4 million the week before Christmas, and then just had so much lasting power over the next couple months. The only reason it wasn't the number one movie of 1977 was because it was the same year that George Lucas released Star Wars. So yeah, that was the number one movie of that year with like over $300 million, almost twice as much as Close Encounters. 5 years later, Spielberg returned to sci-fi with E.T. the Extraterrestrial, a more family-friendly look at Close Encounters, this time with a lovable alien. That only opened with 11.9 million on June 11th, 1982, but those were different times, and that movie had one of the most legendary box office runs in the past 45 years, maybe until a recent showing for Obsession. E.T. just kept making more and more money each weekend, with its biggest weekend being only 17.2 million. But it stayed in theaters for almost a year, grossing 357 million just in North America and the same amount overseas. In 2002, E.T. got a 20th anniversary release that added another 27 million, and then it got a 40th anniversary release in 2022. So it's made 439.8 million during its entire domestic run. 20 years later, Spielberg followed E.T. with two very different sci-fi movies starring Tom Cruise. First was an adaptation of Philip K. Dick's Minority Report, and then there was H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds in 2002 and 2005, respectively. The first of those is not an alien invasion movie, but more of a sci-fi crime thriller, and it opened with 35.7 million and goes to 132 million domestic and twice that amount overseas. 2 years later, Spielberg and Cruise reteamed for War of the Worlds, a remake of one of the most well-known H.G. Wells alien invasion stories, opening with 64.8 million and grossing almost twice as much domestically, with 234 million and another 372.6 million worldwide. The point is that Spielberg has been connected with science fiction going back to the 70s, So his return to the genre with an intriguing-looking sci-fi thriller is reason enough for many people to go see Disclosure Day, despite that clunky title. The thing is that Spielberg doesn't exactly have to carry Disclosure Day based on his name alone, since he has an amazing cast headlined by Emily Blunt, who was pretty much an A-lister at this point, and that's even before returning for The Devil Wears Prada 2 last month, which has grossed over $200 million domestically. In the decade since the first The Devil Wears Prada, Blunt was the star of hubby John Krasinski's A Quiet Place and its sequel, A Quiet Place 2, both pretty big hits. Starred with The Rock in Jungle Cruise. She got an Oscar nomination for starring in Christopher Nolan's $300 million plus grossing Oppenheimer, and she teamed with Ryan Gosling for 2004's The Fall Guy, which is one of the only movies I mentioned not to make $100 million domestically. Her co-stars Josh O'Connor and Coleman Domingo are no slouches, both having hosted Saturday Night Live in the past year. O'Connor's episode just ran this past weekend, actually. Both those actors have become quite well known and quite popular, mainly from TV shows like The Crown and Euphoria, than necessarily the movies, but they clearly do have their fans. Likewise, so does Oscar winner Colin Firth, who plays a key role in the movie, and the cast is rounded out by Eve Hewson from Flora and Son, also Bono's daughter, Wyatt Russell, who happens to be Kurt Russell's son, and Elizabeth Marvel from Law & Order, who I have no idea who her parents are. Disclosure Day has a lot of other non-Spielberg comparisons I can make, the most obvious one being M. Night Shyamalan's Signs, which opened with $60 million in 2002, literally a few weeks after Minority Report, and it went out to gross $228 million domestic and $408.3 million worldwide. An even more recent companion is Denis Villeneuve's Arrival, which opened with just $24 million in November 2016, but ended up making more than $100 million, both in North America and overseas. Although that's still half the Signs with 14 years of ticket price inflation. Although I've seen the trailer for Disclosure Day a million times, I'm not really sure that this movie is really connecting with audiences, especially younger audiences who just might not have that connection with Spielberg's sci-fi movies as older audiences. Younger audiences also have movies like Backrooms, Obsessions, and other movies that just target to their interests. Disclosure Day will clearly veer more towards older, over 30 audiences who have grown up with Spielberg's sci-fi. Even so, the last few Spielberg movies have not done that well, with The Fabelmans only making $43.3 million worldwide, and his 2021 West Side Story musical doing slightly better with $76 million worldwide and $10.6 million domestic opening. Although West Side Story has to get an asterisk since it opened during COVID and with Spider-Man No Way Home dominating theaters. Normally, Disclosure Day would be a guaranteed summer box office hit, making $200 million or more, but we live in different times now, and the movie has such an odd and quizzical take on the alien invasion movie. I'm not even sure that having a PG-13 will help the movie so much, because I just don't see any teenagers having much interest in it. Reviews for Disclosure Day, including my own, won't hit until Tuesday morning after I record this, but based on all the early social media reactions, I feel like it should be good for a 70 to 80% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Maybe that will help convince those on the fence to check it out this weekend. Still, I think that Spielberg's Disclosure Day will end up with somewhere in the mid 40 millions, so right in between Minority Report and War of the Worlds. It should still be good for 100 million domestic or more, but we'll have to see how reviews and audience reactions affect its long-term legs. Next up is RuPaul's new comedy, Stop That Train, which Bleecker Street is releasing nationwide this Friday. I'll start by sharing some of the trailer, and then I'll share my spoiler-free review, and after that, I'll talk about the box office.
Madam President, have you made a decision?
I have. It's time to nuke Russia. Kidding!
It's so funny every time!
Hey, Barb, check it in.
They're letting us girls go.
They can't shut down a whole train line.
They can if it's called Stank Rail.
What are you gonna do?
You know, a little light sex swear. Maybe I'll sell my hair.
Isn't that the plot of Les Miserables?
And this Liz is gonna be far from miserable.
Clemazonian is looking for 2 replacements. Now that could be us.
Opulent.
Luxury.
Oh my god, Tess? I didn't recognize you with all the crow's feet and sun damage.
Madam President, there's a Glamazonian Express headed directly into a massive storm.
It's a Stormaganza.
Mom! I'm sorry, she always does this.
I have to admit that I did not like the trailer for Stop That Train, because it looked pretty idiotic. Honestly, I've never watched RuPaul's Emmy-winning reality series, RuPaul's Drag Race. Not that I have anything against drag per se, or those who perform in drag. I have quite a few trans friends, at least 3 or 4, and I have a much easier time understanding someone being trans than gay men who want to dress up as women to perform musical numbers. I just never understood cabaret or burlesque or drag. It was never my thing. But I went to see Stop That Train because I knew that Bleecker Street was giving it a wide release, and having an in-person screening meant I could watch with others rather than watching alone at home on a screener, which misses the whole point of communal moviegoing, which is crucial for comedies. And this one is actually a pretty good comedy. In the movie, best friends Dee Dee and Tess, played by drag performers named Jujubee and Ginger Minge, who I'm assuming are part of RuPaul's stable of friends. I don't really know. But the two best friends work for the dubious Stank Rail, a low-end train line that goes out of business, forcing them to look for new jobs. When they have a chance to join the crew of the luxurious Glamazonian Express, a cross-country bullet train, they make their own uniforms to pretend to be train attendants. They immediately get the side-eye treatment from three of the train's elite first-class rail attendants. You can see behind me. And they're put into the lesser coach area. Just as Dee Dee and Tess get settled there, reports start to rise that the train is heading into a major stormaganza. And as Dee Dee and Tess try to keep the riders calm, things just get crazier and crazier and crazier. Now, I wasn't really familiar with either Jujubee or Ginger Minj, but I guess it's safe to call them actresses, even though they're drag queens, i.e. men in dress as opposed to being trans. It's Pride Month, and still there's a little bit of confusion. It's going to get even worse once John Early's Maddie's Secret comes out, which is one of my favorite movies this year. They're both really, really good actresses. They're funny, and Jujubee is quite likable, even though her character comes across as quite dumb when we meet her. Plus, she has a budding romance going with the even dumber assistant conductor of the train. RuPaul plays President Gagwell, who kind of shows up like maybe a half hour into the movie, and I actually think she can make a better POTUS than a current one, which is not saying much. Yeah, she shows up because of this train heading into the Stormaganza. She has to kind of like step in and do something about it. The other drag queen from this too I thought was really good was Latrice Royale, who plays Barbara, who's a Stank Rail supervisor for the two friends we meet earlier. And she shows up at a lot of other jobs, positions as the movie goes on. And so as much of the focus of Stop That Train is on RuPaul and her drag queen friends, the cis women are also quite fantastic, particularly Rachel Bloom, who I haven't really seen in a lot. And I'm constantly confusing her with Rachel Brosnahan, maybe because I haven't seen Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, which I hear is really good. Anyway, she plays Donna, the woman working at the control center who foresees Stormaganza coming, but is constantly having to deal with sexism and misogyny at her workplace, which is an ongoing joke throughout the movie, but also leads to a lot of funny moments. There are also great recurring gags involving Sarah Michelle Gellar and Missy Pyle. So it's not just the men in drag playing women having all the fun in this movie. And also there's a great appearance by Chris Parnell from SNL playing the train's conductor. And he's so good in this, you just want to see him in more stuff. And generally, the cast is great. The writing is really good. I mean, last year, Bleecker Street released the British spoof comedy Fackham Hall, which made fun of Downton Abbey, and I didn't like that movie at all. I hated it. But this ended up working really well, much better than I expected from the trailer, because RuPaul has mainly been hugely popular from the reality series RuPaul's Drag Race. I mean, a lot of that has to do with filmmaker Adam Shankman, who directed Hairspray and Rock of Ages. I owe a lot of why Stop This Train works because of him and the funny script by Christina Friel and Connor Wright. That's just chock full of jokes and physical humor, sight gags. It's almost as nonstop as a runaway train, in fact. Haha. I don't want to spoil the gags, but there's a great bit with a scorpion. And at one point, Arida asks one of the protagonists to help with her mother, who he actually sees in a coffin. And I laughed. I thought that was really funny. The movie very much seems like a loving tribute to the comedies by the Zucker brothers. And though it's not exactly rocket science in terms of storytelling, it's a lot of fun. It should appeal to RuPaul's fans, I assume, and those who enjoy irreverent comedy. I'm giving Stop That Train a 7 out of 10 for its ability to blend a lot of different forms of comedy into a movie that doesn't always work, but certainly goes all out to try to make people laugh. Now let's get to the box office analysis. And Stop That Train is a hard one to gauge, which has won, get this, 29 primetime Emmys since it began airing in 2009. I don't know a ton about the show because I've never seen it. So instead, I'll focus on director Adam Shankman, who might be best known for directing the Hairspray musical movie, which featured John Travolta in drag. That opened in July 2007, and it's kind of crazy that it's almost 20 years old. But it opened with 27.5 million and grossed 118.9 million domestic and 83.9 million overseas, so it was considered a hit. 5 years later, Shankman followed that up with a movie based on the musical Rock of Ages. This one starring none other than Tom Cruise, not in drag, but as a rock star. That movie really bombed with just 14.4 million opening, and it grossed 38.6 million domestic and 22 million overseas. So it only made 61 million globally compared to a 70 million production budget. Since then, Shankman is directing a lot of television, although there's been a few exceptions, including the remake What Men Want in 2019, and then the Disenchanted sequel in 2022. This movie was originally supposed to come out early in the year, but it was probably a wise decision to delay it until Pride Month, since it's likely to bring a lot of people from the LGBTQ plus community. I think Bleecker Street might be able to give this a pretty wide theatrical release based on RuPaul's popularity, but I also have to assume that there'll be a lot of red states in MAGA country that just won't have anything to do with this movie. That could make the box office heavily weighed to theaters in California and other big cities, which could make up for weaker areas, but we'll have to see how wide Bleecker Street decides to release the movie. Despite not having a theater count for Stop That Train yet, I'm going to think that the popularity of RuPaul and the fact that it's Pride Month could help the movie bring in 4 million or more this coming weekend, which would still put it near the bottom of the top 10. The next and final new wide release this weekend is Kenji Tanagaki's violent action thriller, The Furious, which Lionsgate is releasing presumably in a moderate number of theaters on Friday. As with the RuPaul movie, I'm going to show you a little bit of the trailer, and then I'll get into my spoiler-free review, and then I'll talk a little bit about this box office.
You're looking for someone.
So am I.
My wife went missing.
I've been hearing great things about Kenji Tanagaki's The Furious since it premiered as part of Midnight Madness at the Toronto International Film Festival in September last year, as well as playing other genre fests. Lionsgate are delivering it to North American audiences in a similar way as they did the two Sisu movies from Finnish filmmaker Jalmari Helander. Tanagaki-san is a well-known Japanese stunt coordinator who transitioned to directing, although I've only seen his action comedy Enter the Fat Dragon, starring Donnie Yen. The Furious stars Chinese action star Miao Ji and Indonesian action star Joe Taslim, who just appeared in Mortal Kombat 2 playing Sub-Zero, but he also appeared in The Raid Redemption and the show Warrior. Miao Ji plays Wang Wei, a mute with a young daughter named Duaney, played by Inyu Yang, who's kidnapped by a child trafficking ring, forcing him to team with an undercover journalist to get her back. That plot might sound familiar because there have been multiple Jason Statham movies, as well as a recent Mila Jovovich movie about young girls getting kidnapped and some ex-military personnel having to get them back. As the movie begins, we don't really know much about Wang Wei. In fact, we don't really learn his name until the very end of the movie, and it's never quite clear why he's mute either, because that's definitely a bit of a plot device which never serves much purpose. I'll admit that when this movie first started, I wasn't quite sure where it was taking place, because I knew that the director was Japanese, but the main character and his daughter were obviously Chinese, but they weren't in China. Turns out this was a Chinese production filming in Bangkok, which has actually been relatively common in Hong Kong action movies and crime films. As the movie went along, it didn't really matter where it took place, since it was a pretty easy story to follow, involving children being kidnapped and trafficked, and a father desperate to get his daughter back. The movie has a great cast of action stars, including Brian Lee, who some might remember from the Oscar-winning Everything Everywhere All at Once, as one of the main bad guys, and he's also fantastic in this. Director Tanagaki really does a great job using the violent action scenes to really wow the audience and keep them enthralled, even with a plot that seems fairly familiar and overused. Up until now, John Wick has been the gold standard for movie action and stunts, but The Furious really ups the ante and makes John Wick look tame by comparison. Tanagaki is not only a fine director, but he has a great supporting stunt team that can handle anything he throws at them. The stunt work in this movie is just jaw-dropping from beginning to end in terms of the violence and the spectacle and just things you've just never seen before on screen. Because of this, I'm giving The Furious an 8 out of 10 rating. It's tough to gauge how The Furious will do at the box office because I don't have a theater count at this time. It could be moderate in 300 to 400 theaters. It could be wider in 800, 900 theaters. I really don't know. As we saw with Lionsgate's Powerbad last week, even with the moderately wide release and big stars like Paul Rudd and Nick Jonas, that couldn't even make $2 million. I feel like The Furious is getting a similar release to Lionsgate's Sisu, which opened in 1,000 theaters in April 2023. It opened with 3.3 million, which is great, and then made 7.3 million domestic and 11 million overseas. It then had a sequel 2 years later with Sisu Road to Revenge. It opened in twice as many theaters, 2,222 theaters. It only made 2.4 million, less than this previous movie, even though it got better reviews. That made 4.5 million domestic and 7.8 million globally, which is both less than the previous movie. It's hard to tell when an Asian movie can do as well as a Finnish movie. At least the sequel had Stephen Lang, who's a pretty well-known star. But there's a lot of buzz for The Furious. A lot of people talking about it, both since it premiered at Toronto, but also since it was a Monday Mystery movie a few weeks back, which is similar to what they did with Sisu. So we'll see how it goes. There's a lot of buzz for the movie going back to last year's TIFF, and especially after being the Monday Mystery movie just the last week. But being an Asian film and also being such a violent action movie might limit its American audience, and it might actually overlap with those who might go see the new Spielberg movie. I think The Furious might be struggling to make $2 million this weekend. I hope I'm wrong, but if that's the case, it'll open outside the top 10. It's all dependent on the theater count. At the time of recording this, I do not have that theater count. So that's it for this week's Weekend Warrior show. The next week, Disney and Pixar is Toy Story 5. I probably won't be doing a video show because I will not have a chance to see the movie before the Weekend Warrior show. And because of that, I might just do a print edition next week, which is just changing things up a little. I'm also covering Tribeca a lot still, and I'll hope to have some stuff on Tribeca very soon.
I wish I was someone better. 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 Made a mistake, 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 made a mistake.
The stunt work in this movie is just drawback. The stunt work in this movie is just drawback. The stunt work in this movie is just The stunt work in this movie is just